I have this wood riser that I got from Target for $5. It's in the shape of a cutting board, and then there's little feet on the back side. I'm going to start by painting it with some Wise Owl Snow Owl, and I'm going to give this one coat, allow it to dry, and once that was dry, I gave a second coat for better coverage. Once that was fully dry, I then took a piece of sanding paper and I just gave it a very light sanding just to make the surface nice and smooth, and then remove the sanding dust. I have this recipe here that my grandmother had written on a piece of paper. She just used a regular black ink pen on a piece of computer paper. Now you could do a special recipe or even just a special note. I then took that original copy and I took a picture of it with my phone. And when you go to edit a photo on your phone, there is an option to flip the image. So now I printed that off so the writing is backwards. There are other programs that can do this as well if you do not have a phone. I then just use a paper cutter and just cut around the recipe. I'm going to apply some Mod Podge on top of my Wise Owl Snow Owl. I'm using the matte finish and a Gen foam brush to apply it. And while the Mod Podge is wet, you're going to lay your recipe face down so that the ink in the writing is facing down. And you want to rub that in really well. Now, when you apply the Mod Podge before you apply your piece of paper, you do want to make sure you have a nice good layer on the board. And I'm just rubbing really well. Now, I'm going to allow this to dry overnight. So you want it to sit really good for several hours. I have a small glass of water and a washcloth, and I'm just going to rub on top of the paper. And as I rub, the paper gets wet and starts to crumble up, but then the ink stays on the board. Now, you do not want to over wet this because, again, it is paper. You don't want to wipe away the ink, but you do want to kind of focus on the areas that you know had the white computer paper. And this is what I have so far. You can kind of still see the border of the paper, so I'm just going to rub a little more, focusing on the edges and trying to get rid of that little line that you can see. You can even try to sand it off, but just going over it a second time really helped remove that faint little border that you saw. And this is what we have so far. So now the ink from the recipe is now on the cutting board. Now I'm going to allow that to dry since we just put water to it, and then I'm going to use some Wise Owl varnish as my top coat. You can also use the 1-hour enamel, or you can do another coat of the Mod Podge. Once that was fully dry, you can just decorate it to your liking. This recipe is called Lovely Cookies, so I went with a red and white striped ribbon, and I'm just going to make a bow on the top here. And I'm just going to shorten up the tails a little bit so it's not covering on top of my recipe. Now, this is a wired ribbon. It's a little easier to work with. I then have these wood hearts that I got from Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to place 3 of them on the right side. They are little wood sticker hearts, so I'm just removing the sticker from the back side just so it doesn't sit up too far on the piece of wood. And once I have them in the position I like, I'm just going to take some hot glue and adhere those, and I'm going to fill that little empty space there with the wooden hearts. Now, what I like about this wood riser is that you can display it a few different ways. You can just leave it on all 4 legs. You can attach a hanger to the top 2 legs, which is what I'm doing here with my staple gun and a piece of jute. Or you can just stand it on the bottom 2 legs and it will stand upright. Now, to finish this off, I decided to take some jute, and I'm just going to glue it on the edge of the board here and wrap it around about 3 times. And I just feel like it kind of finished off the top here. And I'm just going right above where the recipe begins. And I'm just using the hot glue to hold the jute in place. And I repeated the same thing for the bottom part as well. I just added 3 strands of the jute, and I'm gluing it to the back side of the riser. And there we go. Now we have this really special decor that you can really make customizable. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Paint products, tissue paper, transfers, and mesh stencils can all be found on our webpage at chalkitupfancy.com. And don't forget, you can also check out other tutorials on our webpage as well. Have a great day.